A major knowledge issue when talking about violent video games is what type of game is it? This may sound like a very simple issue, though it really isn't, as different genre games affect people differently. I will now go into the three major genres of violent video games currently played. I feel it is important to go into some detail as it is very easy to fall into the trap of generalizations, and be unaware of the intricacies of the highly complicated issue. The first genre I wish to talk about is the RPG genre. This stands for role-playing game. The game you're currently viewing is a free online game called RuneScape, which is a subset of the RPG genre, and is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. This basically just means it is an RPG which is played online and with other real-life players. These games are where the player creates a customizable character where they select the race, gender, and physical attributes. The player controls their character from a third-person perspective and is then free to explore huge environments with cities, jungles, and a complex trading system. This genre is the home to games such as World of Warcraft, which has a notorious reputation of being highly addictive. But what makes RPGs so addictive in general is their leveling up system. The player needs to achieve certain ranks or skill levels to be able to wield certain weapons and make certain objects, which can hook players as they need to invest large amounts of time in order to achieve these milestones. Although the violence in this genre is generally not too intense, fighting is certainly a key theme, and many goals are unattainable without slaying certain monsters or people. Because of the multi-layered and complex nature of these games, younger children are generally not playing them, as they are simply too complex to grasp without investing a large amount of time, though it is by the same reasoning that people become so engrossed in them. I personally have invested a large amount of time into RuneScape, which I played avidly for several years. Although I never specifically felt angry during the game, or due to the game, there have been times of great frustration and desire to invest large amounts of time into the game. The problem with this genre of game is that once you have an understanding of the game, you become engrossed and can spend many hours working to achieve in-game goals. There have also been cases of people killing themselves after dying in the game and losing their inventory. I don't think this can be specifically blamed on the violent aspects of the game, more it is the way the game is designed to make you dependent on this new secondary reality. The second genre of commonly played violent video game is the RTS genre, which stands for real-time strategy. This type of game is one where the player is a sort of commander and controls units from a bird's eye view. The general point of these types of games is to create a bigger army than your opponents and defeat them in battle. The game you're currently viewing is StarCraft 2. It is a classic example of an RTS. These games are the most complex of all three genres, as the mechanics of the game are very in-depth and the game is effectively impossible to master. Entire industries have been created around competitive RTS games, and the prize pools are often in the hundreds of thousands. Subsequently, however, the game is played by a more mature audience of gamers. The pros are often in their early 20s. Furthermore, StarCraft 2 is an official sport in South Korea, having a video game become an important part of many people's lives. The game is watched like any other spectator sport and has dedicated television channels. Since these games are largely based around battles between a large number of units, the violence is more abstract than not actually a huge part of the game. The way the units engage each other is far more important than the actual act of violence itself. Also, in StarCraft specifically, the units are more alien-based in human form, further distancing the violence from humanity. The game is far too strategy and mechanics-based to be honestly considered violent. Violence is undoubtedly an aspect of the game, but it's absolutely not a fundamental part of it, like it is for other genres. It might as well just be a calculation to achieve the same ends. Recently, in my own life, I have become more involved with RTS games. I am intrigued by their depth and the huge amount of skill required to be good. Although the violence itself does not make me angry, the sheer intensity of the game can make it very stressful to play and make me highly frustrated when I lose. Although, out of the three genres, I think having success in an RTS game is the most rewarding. Finally, the third genre of violent video game I want to talk about today is the FPS genre, which stands for first-person shooter. The title of this genre pretty much sums it up. The player plays a character from a first-person perspective and shoots people. The mechanics in this type of game are generally pretty straightforward, namely aim and shoot, and subsequently is very popular as learning the game is generally very simple. The game you're currently viewing is called Halo. Most first-person shooters have a multiplayer mode, where players hunt one another with various guns. In fact, the most popular game for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and in fact the most purchased game of all time, is a first-person shooter called Call of Duty, which is set in real life where players shoot one another in human form. This genre is easily the most blatantly violent of the three I've mentioned today, and is the genre which receives the most criticism for over-the-top violence. Another negative factor about this genre of game is that because of the simple nature of the game mechanics, there are generally far younger players who are considered more susceptible to violent themes than in RPGs and RTSs. Since the whole point of the game is to massacre the opponent as efficiently as possible, there are knowledge issues about whether these games cause players to become desensitized to the concept of killing and murder. This is very hard to justify, as there haven't been enough studies done, as well as not all people react equally to the same stimuli. I personally have played extensive Call of Duty and Halo, and haven't felt any long-term consequences from this. My family and I have both noted, though, after sessions, I am often highly irritable and pent up, which is counterintuitive, as I largely use FPS games as a stress relief. At the same time, however, I have had many calm and aggression-free experiences with first-person shooters, and thanks to the online component, it can be a very social activity. It is, however, very common for FPS games to cause rage and they are highly competitive. I know many people firsthand who have broken televisions, punched holes in walls, and broken controllers due to frustration caused by an FPS game.